Well, thank you all for being here this evening. What a packed house. I'm so thrilled that this event is a sellout event. So thank you all for taking time and learning about how to be a skilled receiver. This event is actually a dream come true for me. This is 2 years in the making, and I'll get into that, explain why that's the case. But first, I wanted to introduce our esteemed guest, Amanda Owen. Amanda has been a mentor to me and a source of inspiration and education, and she has 25 years of experience as a counselor and as an author, a journalist, and a coach as well. And I just wanted to share with everyone just a few words of that people have said, famous people have said about Amanda's work. The New York Times bestselling author Christiane Northrup, MD, calls Amanda's Power of Receiving philosophy brilliant, elegant, profound, and enormously practical. Maria Shriver calls her work insightful, and Elaine Shamos, the director of the Women's Health Resource Center at Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center, says Amanda's presentation skills are outstanding, and most importantly, her message is life-changing. And I have to say, Amanda, your message is truly life-changing.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I wanted to, I guess, give the background story of how we met, which is, I don't know about you ladies in this room, but I have on my nightstand about always like 3 books that I'm somewhere in the process of reading, and I never seem to finish. And I was scrolling through Facebook one day, and someone posted about a book in a Facebook feed, and it said, "This book is amazing, it's changing my life, and it's called The Power of Receiving." And I stopped dead in my tracks, and I thought to myself, you need this book. You need this book right now. You're going to order this immediately, and you're going to read this right now. And I did. And I've never experienced that before with like the internet. I've had that experience walking in a bookstore. Has anyone walked in a bookstore and like a book has fallen off the shelf and it happens to be like the exact book you need to read at that moment? So I ordered it right away, and I remember laying in bed reading like just the preface and the first chapter, and I read it, and there was a line that really got to me, which was the only possible match for someone who is not able to receive is someone who is not able to give. Just think about that. I mean, how many of our friends seem to always talk about like they're in these, they end up dating the same guy, or they have the same kind of bosses, and they have the same, they're overgiving, and they're not receiving any help or support. So I thought that was amazing. So I remember sitting up in bed thinking, oh my God, this book is exactly what I need in my life. And not only that, every woman I know needs to read this book. And I'm learning how to trust my intuition more and more. As when I started the Walnut Club, one thing I've learned to do is be more trusting in myself and my intuition. So I thought, I need to get this message out. I need to share this with all the women of the Walnut Club. And I'm going to send this author, a fan mail. So the next morning, I sent her, first time in my life I've ever sent someone a fan email. And I said, I've only read up to the first chapter, but your book is amazing. And I know it's going to change my life, and it's going to change the lives of so many other women. But let me tell you about the Walnut Club. I just started this group. We were a few months old. And something just compelled me to just tell her, this stranger, about myself and about the Walnut Club. And I mentioned we're in Philadelphia, blah, blah, blah. The next day, I get an email from Amanda saying, hi, by the way, I live in Ardmore. So I immediately was like, oh my God, can we talk? I need to talk to you. I need to be your friend. I need you in my life. So here we are, almost 2 years later. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And I also just wanted to mention there's a lot of women in the room that are not familiar with the Walnut Club. So the Walnut Club is the city's first and only private club for professional women that has both professional networking and social activities. And we are all about supporting ambitious women and helping them with inspiration and education. And one of the things that we love to do is, to that end with education, is introduce our members to great thought leaders and great topics and speakers that they may not have heard otherwise, that aren't very mainstream, that I think, that interest me, that I think might interest also the women of the Walnut Club. So I would love to that, I'd love to get started by, let's get into this, Amanda, and start asking you some questions. I would love to, I guess, let's just tell us about your background and how you even started this journey of learning how to create courses on receiving and to teach people for the last 20 years and how to be a skilled receiver.
Okay, good. I would love to do that. And thank you for having me here. Thank you for emailing me. And in fact, not only was I living in Ardmore, I had moved from Arizona to Ardmore like a week or two before. So I said I actually just arrived as well. So your timing is really, really good to reach out to me. Yeah, I want to tell you a little bit how I got introduced to the topic of receiving. It was a couple of decades ago when I was a social worker, a counselor, and so many of my clients were talking about how they were giving and giving and giving to the important people in their life who were not giving back to them. And so whether it was a spouse, you know, mate, a friend, a boss, and they said, you know, what can I do? I feel drained. I feel like I'm doing the helping, the giving, and I don't know how to solve this issue. And so as I thought about it, I thought, you know, why is it that we talk about giving all the time and the need to give, which we should give? But 50% of every single transaction is the recipient of the act of giving. So every giver has a receiver. And I thought, why do we not know who the receiver is? Why is there not an archetype for the receiver? Why do I not even know what the definition of receiving would be? So I decided to start there. And in the beginning, it was just kind of a problem to solve, not only for my clients, but for me too, because I was very much that person who kind of gave and gave and gave. I was in a helping profession. I was the go-to person for friends. I was kind of like the shrink for my friends. And, you know, it seemed kind of like the work was never done. And so I thought, well, this is a good problem to solve for my clients, but for me as well. And so as I started thinking about it, and I thought, we have this archetype of the giver, and we all know what a giver is. It's somebody who is generous in their soul, in their spirit. When we say somebody is such a giver, we know that this is not a person who is super giving over here and then super stingy over here, because we know it's just a part of who they are. And that's kind of like what an archetype is. It's not cherry picking, giving here, not giving there. So I thought with receiving, it should be exactly the same thing. So I thought, I mean, has anybody ever heard, people may say, well, I want to be as giving as that person, but has anybody ever heard, oh, I want to learn how to receive. Oh, did you see that person receive? I want to receive like that person receives. It's like, let me tell you, I met a receiver today, and that's my inspiration for my life. No.
Like, she must be an amazing receiver.
Exactly. It's not in our vocabulary. And so the first thing I did, because when I was first studying this, I just went to a dictionary. It was kind of pre-internet. And I thought, what is the definition of receiving, like to receive? And the definition was to accept willingly. That was it, to accept willingly. And as I thought about that, I thought, you know, when you receive, you don't have to like what you receive, what you hear, what you see, what somebody tells you, but you can still be receptive. You can still receive it. Or I have a motto, receive everything, decide later. So you're not blocking everything off at the pass. And so that's where I started. I thought, clearly what has to happen, because we have a culture that puts a halo around the giver, that this is a virtue, but either denigrates the receiver. Like, is that a user or a taker, or is it, we're not quite sure what that is. So I thought, first I need to develop a way to think about receiving within a culture that has no vocabulary for receiving, and if they do, it's extremely distorted. And so in thinking about that, I thought the first thing I have to figure out is, how do I get my unconscious, my subconscious, to value what receiving has to offer? Giving is easy, you know, you look good. But receiving, I thought, okay, well, what is this? And so as I thought about receiving, and as a way to kind of articulate it in a way that seemed valuable and something that I would really want to learn how to do, well, I was actually pondering this, and I ran across a little story about these Buddhists who were training for evolution over decades in the Himalayas. And at the very end of this very short story, these monks were asked to go down into the street and beg for alms. And that was the end of the story. And I thought, that's so interesting that this would be such an evolved kind of spiritual act to beg. And I thought, well, I get it in the sense that you're giving somebody else the opportunity to give to you, which is nice. And I thought about it some more, and I thought, you know, your ego would so have to be to the side to beg. And I thought, that's pretty spiritual, because you're kind of putting all of that aside, and it's really, I thought at the end of the day, it's an experience, a reflection of your full humanity. That when we say the giver and the receiver are one, flip sides of the same coin, that I thought this is really an expression of kind of the universality of the human experience, that we are all drops of water in the ocean, grains of sand on the beach. Now with that, because I was really working on my own evolution at the time and my self-improvement, emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually, I thought that's something that I could really hold on to, because it is true that it is more vulnerable to receive than it is to give. And as I started making this connection of this kind of wholeness of the giving-receiving experience, you know, I thought also that, can the giving be 100% healthy if we don't have 100% health as a receiver? They are a team. So I thought, this taints my giving if I do not know how to receive, and it taints it in another way. If I don't want to be on the receiving end, which looks like, oh, don't worry about me, I'm fine, I don't need your help, that push away, then I thought, then how do I feel about the people I am helping if I don't want to be in their position? They are in the same culture I am, so that there's kind of a shame almost to be in need, to ask for help, to want to receive from somebody. So this is what started me on the path of thinking in these ways about receiving, and what the possibilities for receiving might be, and how it would help my giving, and also that it would be a tool that would replenish my energy and feel renewing. Because we all know if we give and give and give and give and help, we know that we end up exhausted. We pay a high price emotionally, physically. We pay a price with our health as well. And as I always say, an exhausted woman is not an empowered woman. Yet we are in a culture that makes this such a virtue that it's kind of hard to think about it in a different way. So what I did was I thought I need to come up with some action steps for receiving so that I can teach my clients, teach myself. And so back then I came up with 3 steps to receiving because I thought this needs action steps, because otherwise, if I just wait for someone to offer to do something for me, progress will be glacial. Because if you are at all like I was, it's like no one was banging down my door to see what they could do to help me anymore. I had very effectively, been the person who could handle it all, do it all. So people were not even asking me. So I thought I need kind of an action step.
And I love how your
So,
actions are very easy, such as you created the ABCs of how to be a skilled receiver. So I'd love for you to get into those action steps.
Okay.
So what is A?
So A is accept all compliments. And the reason for this is that when someone compliments you and you push it away, you say, oh, I love that shirt you're wearing. Oh, this old rag. Oh, I got it at the thrift shop, 25 cents. There's a stain on the back. All the ways that we're actually literally pushing away energy rather than bringing it this way. And again, we're very cultured to do that. And by the way, that's very female. It's very female. Some men do, but it's very female to do this. Now, what we don't do, and the reason that I brought this up kind of as a first step and wanted to train my clients to accept all compliments, is because I thought we don't make a distinction between the push away of the compliment and the difficulty in manifesting our goals in life, achieving the things that we want in life. So it's kind of that push away is also pushing away a whole lot of things that could come your way that would improve your life, that would help you be happier, certainly more relaxed. So this seemingly tiny thing, to accept all compliments, is a way to say, I am ready to receive, so that simply by saying thank you, what that does is that is a huge message. And it's just thank you. It's not a dissertation. My aunt gave it to me. It came from Saks. I love this. It's my favorite. Just thank you.
And I have to say that it does take practice when someone compliments me, and just to sit with the thank you and just sit with that. Yes. So I just tried, thanks to you, and it's just, so thank you. Yes. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you. So that concept of saying thank you, I want to put a little caveat in here. Because sometimes people bring up, but what if I don't feel deserving? Or what if they're disingenuous? What if? Doesn't matter. It is absolutely beside the point. Because when you think about it, if your self-esteem had to be in tip-top shape in the exact second someone paid you a compliment, you may have to turn away compliments. So accepting a compliment is, in a sense, saying thank you. Isn't this lovely that I walk through a world where somebody would bother to pay me a compliment, to say something nice to me? So we say receive graciously, give generously, receive graciously. It is the way you return energy. That energy comes in through the compliment, and then your graciousness in accepting it is how you return that energy. How many people have been caught in a situation where you do compliment somebody and they push it away instead of just saying thank you? This is a pretty common experience, isn't it? So accept all compliments is the first one I started with, and it does feel a little unnatural when you start.
Yeah. But it also, when you push that compliment away, it makes the other person a little uncomfortable, almost. You know, for you to like deflect it, you actually are being more in service to the other person by just saying thank you, and just mean it. And
Exactly.
And the other thing that you were mentioning this about the self-esteem, I thought it was really profound to me that it makes sense now to explain it, but I'd love for you to share with the audience like what you. It has there's no connection of self-esteem to your ability to receive. So I'd just love to talk about, and like the analogy of the bee and a flower.
Oh, yes, yes. One of the analogies I use, or example I use in my first book, is the giving and receiving, which is what this compliment thing is. That is a giving and receiving transaction that happened. So that one of the things I describe in the book is I say receiving is mechanistic. It has nothing to do with your sense of self-worth, sense of deserving. It's mechanistic. A giver and a receiver, you can receive no matter how you feel about yourself. And so one of the examples I use is a flower that to attract its pollinator. It doesn't have to jump up and down, pollinate me, pollinate me. Mm-hmm. So that receiving, that act of receiving, the pollinator pollinates the flower, the blossom, that is the mechanistic nature of giving and receiving, like the yin and the yang, right? The circle with the Tao with the two dots in it. Same thing, that it is this constantly moving universal force between the active and the receptive, the giving and the receiving. Mm-hmm. And even with the flower, and let's say a pollinator, who is the giver and who is the receiver, right? The flip sides of the same coin. Yep. Really.
It's true.
It's the same. Mm-hmm.
So I'd love for you to talk about the bee spiritually naked, the second step.
So first, accept all compliments, and then my next thing to teach my clients back then was, and this is the way I termed it, because of the way I was informed by that story about Buddhism. It's just called be spiritually naked, which means be authentic, be transparent, be you. Not an idea of who you should be, who you want to be, who you someday maybe will be, who you don't want to be, but just to be you. It doesn't mean that you don't have boundaries. It doesn't mean you don't make choices on what you choose to reveal about yourself. But we all know that when we're with somebody, spending time with somebody who we can relate to, who I always call is just as messed up as I am. You know, that basically I have some really great things about me. I have some things that could definitely use some work. That's kind of like everybody, right? When we're around somebody who feels in a social role that they need to be really on point, really perfect, it can be very nerve-wracking to be around someone like that. It's like there's an armor there we can't quite get through. But when we're relaxed, be spiritually naked, that means to just be in tune with who you are and where you are. What feels right to you, what does your intuition tell you, and to be transparent and revealing. Again, with appropriate boundaries. You should never say or behave in a way that doesn't feel comfortable to you, but that is being spiritually naked. That this feels right for me right now, the way I'm speaking or the way I'm interacting with somebody. So it's a way of just kind of pulling ourselves out of our social roles. Here's what the good friend does, the good mother, the good daughter, the good boss, the good employee. And it's kind of just going a little bit deeper underneath that, which is a recognition of your wholeness and your humanity. And what it does too is it helps you to relax not only within yourself and receive yourself, it helps you receive other people too and all their complexity as well. So be spiritually naked was the second one.
And also with that is just be radically authentic. Is another way that I like to look at that as well, is stop trying to be so perfect all the time. Just be your true authentic self.
Yes.
And yes.
Exactly. And some people are going to receive that and not like it, and some people will receive it and they will like it. Right? But it's a more relaxed way for you to move through your own life.
So the last one is the C of the ABCs. Do you want to share that?
So count your blessings is the third one. And the reason for this is gratitude is a receptive state. And I was basically looking for action steps that people could do that would encourage receiving. So it's just every time you get into a receptive state, I thought that's good, it's balancing out your giving. So when you are grateful for something, the truth is you have to notice it to be grateful for it. And that was a way I went in too, because so often we are so busy in our day. You know, we're driving, listening, you know, to the radio. We don't take that time to just simply take a deep breath, to be grateful. So one of the things, like many people advise, is to write down 5 things you are grateful for every single day. So it doesn't matter where you do them. I always say, don't wait for sacred time. It's really hard to find that time so often in our busy lives. So if you write a gratitude on a cocktail napkin in a bar, that counts. If you are at a red light in your car and there's an old receipt and a pen, write down a gratitude. Get your 5 in. Now you can amplify the gratitude, certainly, by spending 60 seconds in one of those gratitudes. You can deepen your capacity to receive through gratitude by being grateful not only for the really good things. Like I say, you don't cherry pick receiving, just like you don't cherry pick giving. So being grateful for the more difficult things is really advanced receiving. So I feel grateful I was able to feel my grief today. I'm grateful that I spoke up and was angry in the right circumstance. I am grateful my mother is doing better. I'm grateful I wasn't home when my boyfriend called. You can do anything you want. It's your gratitude. So that I really always encourage people to widen your sense of gratitude to encompass your wholeness and your humanity. If you recognize something in yourself that you're even like, oh, I'd like to really, you know, kind of work on that a little bit, well, you have to receive it to notice it, right? And once you notice it, you can be grateful for it. I'm grateful that I learned this about myself today, even though it was uncomfortable. But I'm grateful. That opens up these 3 steps. It is like you have lowered a floodgate and allowed energy, people to come in, to come towards you, because here's the bottom line. You're beckoning energy to move this way, not this way. I would say if you're doing more than 50%, you're doing too much. 50% giving, doing, activity. 50% receptivity, receiving, spending time in receptive states, allowing energy to come towards you. So without violating ever any of your boundaries, watch where you keep something at the past, a feeling, and block it, what somebody wants to say, and block it. an insight that comes to you that's like uncomfortable, block it. Instead, just receive it. Receive everything, decide later. What this does is it begins to fill you up, and what you discover is that you begin to move around a world where people cannot do enough for you. They want to give to you. So it's that pausing, just that pausing and receiving, no matter what it is, no matter what it is, and just spending some time with it. That makes sense? So these are very simple things to do, but they're profound. They begin to shift your energy. They begin to shift your relationship. So the quote that you opened with, that the only possible match for someone who doesn't know how to receive is someone who doesn't know how to give. We could think of this in many areas of our life. We will find our perfect ratio of that giving and receiving. So if you are over giving and under receiving, that's a call for you to learn how to receive, to strengthen your receive muscles. And what happens is that the world and people begin to be more giving. Does that make sense? It's kind of common sense, isn't it? That once you start thinking about receiving, it just makes sense.
Another tool that I wanted to get into to share with the audience that they can start doing as well is when it comes to how does receiving basically help you manifest your goals, like with goal setting? So I'd love to talk about that as a last topic.
So this, and so much of my first book, The Power of Receiving, besides being an education of receiving, is about goal fulfillment. And this actually came about because after I had been working with clients for some years, lecturing, doing workshops on receiving, ultimately I decided to write a book about this. It was called 52 Reflections on the Art of Receiving. And then I tried to sell it to publishers and agents, and they were having none of it. It was like back in like around 2000 maybe. And I thought, well, this is depressing. I'm trying to sell a book about receiving to an unreceptive audience. This is horrible. But I had been working on receiving for a while then. So instead of doing what I would have done before, which is try harder, do 100%, 500%, look for workarounds, look for alternatives, my energy going out and out and out against those closed doors, I stepped back. And I thought, because right up to then, I'd been working with it mostly within just relationships, all kinds of relationships, but relationships. But I thought, I wonder if people knew how to receive, if they would be, basically, I thought, I wonder if there's a manifestation mechanism. That if you learn how to receive, would that floodgate come down? And would you be able to manifest your goal? So I put out a call, and I thought, I'm going to test this out, and then maybe I'll put this in the book and do something with it. So I devised a 5-week course, 2 hours a week. I put out to clients. I said, who wants to join up with this experiment? Meet with me 2 hours a week for 5 weeks. Bring in a goal that you want to manifest by the end of 5 weeks. And so I had about 11, 12, 13 people who signed up for that experiment. Now, what I did, we didn't spend time, we'd spent some time on our goals, but almost all the time I was teaching them all these little 60-second exercises that would strengthen their receive muscles, how to receive. I just turned them into receivers.
And these were people who came to you with various goals like weight loss, making more money, getting a new job, healthier relationships. Finding love.
Yes. Right. My goal, I had just moved, was porch furniture. I had spent all my money on my house. I was like, I don't have a dime left.
And one thing that I found that also is profound that I've never, because I've read The Secret, I've read Law of Attraction and all of those books, but I've never had anyone else personify a goal. So I thought that was really interesting that you, number one, you say pick one goal. Don't try to confuse things. Just be very focused. Just pick one goal
Yes.
and work in relationship with that goal and like personify that goal as if that goal were your partner
Yes.
and your friend and wants the best for you.
Yes.
And so I was practicing that.
Yeah.
And what I thought was, through your teachings, what I thought was also interesting is that when you get disappointed or things don't go your way, like when your book wasn't picked up, you have to receive that, okay, well, this maybe isn't working. What can work? And you just sit with that. And
Yes.
You will find answers. And if you just look for the answer, if you are receptive to the answer, that it will come to you.
Yes, and also it is definitely, it's that, and also I was at that point trying to sell a book. It was before The Secret, it was before Oprah Got Spiritual, it was before all of that. There was, so the unreceptive world, it's like I had this idea, but the world was unreceptive. Once the world became, people became more receptive in general to these kinds of ideas, that was extremely helpful, definitely. And I also tweaked that 5-week course and ended up doing that course was so successful, that first one, I ended up doing them back to back for the next several years and kept tweaking that course. And then I set my first manuscript aside and I completely rewrote the book. And then once The Power of Receiving, I wrote that based on my new knowledge. Then I got an agent very easily, and I got a publisher really easily. So it was kind of a receptive world. I learned more, but I also learned how in this goal way, because my goal was to publish a book and get this message out there. So that this idea, and what Marla is talking about personifying the goal, that what I do is I say when you choose a goal, you want to be a really good partner to your goal. So I would say write it down, one sentence, a nice full sentence with a period at the end. I'm a writer, so I want a nice clean sentence. But also, so often we communicate in very vague ways. And I want your relationship with your goal to be just as if you were talking to a person. So if you're just sitting talking to someone and just say, I'd like to be happier and more peaceful, they would say, well, what would that constitute? What could I do? How could I help you meet that? It's not enough information. On the other side, you don't want to inundate your goal with a list of 50 things. You don't, just like you wouldn't go out on a first date and then pull out a sheet of paper with all your must-haves in a relationship, right? Same thing. So that in this idea of creating a partnership with your goal, I say choose one goal because you don't want to double date. Just like you don't want to go out with somebody who's on their phone the whole time talking to somebody else. So take your goal from inception to completion in that 5 weeks. Once you have that, you can move on to another goal. It's not like you have one goal now, for your entire life, but you need confidence that you can take that one goal from the beginning to the end and to learn how to work with your goal. Let's say that you have a goal that you like, but you have to ask yourself, does your goal like you? Like, are you a good bet? Can your goal count on you? Where's your 50%? So it's not the universe is going to do it all, and it's not, it's all under my own initiative, but instead that this is teamwork. This is a 50-50 relationship. You have 50%, your goal has 50%. And your goal will inform you through people, through articles you run across, commercial you see on TV, a conversation you have with somebody. You would be amazed at what starts appearing in your life, guiding you through this 5-week process so that you can manifest your goal. As I always say to somebody, don't get panicky and put more than 50% in. Because if your goal, you have to find out if your goal is happy with you. If your goal is not, your goal will let you what it needs from you. Right? So I say, don't be high maintenance for your goal. You want your goal to like you. So if your goal is money, you cannot kvetch about money all the time. You can't. Right? Doesn't that make sense? If you want a new relationship, you can't talk all the time about horrible relationships. It doesn't mean that those don't exist in the world. It doesn't mean you're trying to block them. But you want to watch your own conduct. You want that goal to look at you and think, oh, I want to introduce somebody to this person. Does it make sense? So in personifying your goal, it makes it easy to manifest your goal. And often in very miraculous ways.
I forgot about that point about being on a complaint diet as well, a complaint fast with
yes.
with the ABCs is just really be mindful of your
yes.
And I would even when I do my gratitudes in the morning, I always try to curtail my complaints or just in throughout the day.
Well, I have a motto for that, which no suffering allowed, ALLOWED, no suffering allowed, ALOUD. No suffering allowed, no suffering allowed. What complaints do is they discharge energy and they keep your circumstances exactly the same. So that, as fun or interesting or energizing that feels in the moment, it does not change the conditions that are causing your suffering to begin with. What happens when you go on a complaint fast is you begin to feel your feelings. That's what happens, and your feelings are the agents of transformation that will change the conditions, lead to the change, that will change the conditions of your suffering, whatever it is. So it's not about ignoring your suffering, but it is about the way you talk about it. So you don't do the story, about the complaint, but what's underneath it? What's the feeling? It's not maybe the boss is doing this. That's the complaint. But instead of saying, I feel underappreciated at work. I'm just feeling taken for granted. That's your feeling. And that's different from a complaint. And in that feeling, that leads other places. And your goal, love somebody who is in touch with those feelings, because your goal gets to know you better. And your goal has more information to actually help you reach the goal that you want. Make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
So now we have a few more minutes left. Now I'd love to open up some questions to the audience. Does anyone have any?
So yes.
There are those who, as much as they think they're open to like the complaint diet,
Yes.
that the truth is, I'm thinking my older son,
And I'll repeat this for everybody. Yeah.
they really don't want to stop the complaint because they don't want, I forgot the way you put it. If you do the complaint diet, then the feelings underneath. So that's a whole other can of worms for people.
Yeah, so let me put it within context. So the question is that many people would like to go on a complaint, fast, or feel that they are even, but those feelings that come up can be really uncomfortable, can be dicey. And I always say receiving is not for the faint-hearted. It's definitely not, because you absolutely do get in touch, not only with your own feelings, you become a better observer of life. You listen more. Now, think of a complaint fast that this is right along with accepting compliments, writing your gratitudes, being spiritually naked, just being kind of where you are, who you are, just getting in this mode of kind of relaxing within that space. And that by itself is so energizing and feels so good. So that's I would say the miracle of receiving is that the people in your life and the people you meet begin to help you, begin to give to you, and so you yourself become so profoundly different in a sense. So the complaint fast is the commitment along with these other steps rather than just not doing any of them and thinking, I'm not going to complain about anything. Now, the complaint is not to delete the context of what is causing your suffering. So we're not saying, like, don't talk about what's going on. Saying, watch the way you talk about it. We all know kind of what a monologue of misery sounds like, right? We've all seen people's eyes glaze over when we do it to them, and we have tried to escape the room when people are doing it to us. It's a very specific tone, and it's uncomfortable. It's a push away. What you're doing is you want energy to come this way, not that way. So it's kind of being aware of how you're moving in the world and kind of how you want to behave in the world also. So sometimes you just have to check yourself in the complaining, and it's simply because you saw your friend's eyes glaze over, because they've heard that story like for 10 years. They just don't want to go there anymore. So that's to receive that and just say, you know, let me find another way, and then to write it in your gratitudes. I'm so grateful that I caught myself today mid-complaint.
Yeah,
Right.
that's good.
Yes.
So on that note, can you speak to the fact that for a lot of people, remaining not vulnerable or complaining does something for them? That they're unwilling to give up. It serves some purpose.
Yes.
So what's the pivot in your mind that you can't just necessarily move over to giving? You've got people who are served in some way by existing in their current persona of misery or unhappiness, or I must give.
So you're talking about when you confront this in others.
Pardon?
You're talking about when you confront it in somebody else, how to...
Not necessarily. I'm talking about it as a universal concept. That complaining serves some purpose. Some people wear it as an identity, just like they wear not being vulnerable as an identity. It must serve them some way.
In my opinion, what it does is it discharges energy. It's kind of like when someone gets really angry and freaks out, and then they're like so apologetic afterward. That discharge of energy. And a complaint can be discharged. Now, let me do this, only because I really want to talk about receiving in here, and that is a really interesting discussion all by itself about complaining. So yes, everything we do serves some purpose, healthy, unhealthy, somewhere in between. So we can just kind of dually kind of stipulate yes, absolutely. What I can fairly confidently say is that it doesn't solve the problem that's causing your suffering. And so that's the piece that I bring in this complaint fast along with other receive exercises, because I want you to hold your energy here. I want you to beckon energy to come towards you. So in a sense, what I'm doing for that 5-week complaint fast, once you do it, it just is not something you want to do all the time after that. But what I'm doing is closing the escape hatch, in a sense. So feelings definitely come up that need to be, let's say, received. But because you are doing these other exercises that create such positivity in your life, that bring giving people into your life, that bring kind of miracle occurrences, people who help you on your way, this is within the context of all of that too. So that's very specifically the way I'm talking about the complaint fast. Yes?
You mentioned in the courses you've done some kind of almost miraculous examples of people achieving their goals. Could you share one or two that really struck out for you?
Yes. Let's see.
The weight loss. I thought the weight loss one was really interesting.
Oh, the weight loss one.
Yeah.
That's right. I was sharing this with Marla the other day.
Who doesn't want to learn how to lose weight, right? Well,
Yeah,
speak
this
for myself,
was-
at least.
So I decided, after I'd been doing these receive courses for a number of years, so I had, in a sense, receive alumni. So I had people who were very well versed in receiving. Remember, too, this is before my book came out, so they didn't have something to read, too. So this was kind of all through coursework. And I decided to see if weight loss as a goal, I wanted to work with that. So I offered it to my receive alumni and said I'd like to do 4 weeks on weight loss specifically as a goal for anybody who is interested. So people sign up for that. And so what I assumed is that the goal would work with the people who wanted to lose weight by doing things that we all think of that would help you lose weight, through food, through walking on the treadmill, that's not what the goals did at all. It was absolutely miraculous. So this one particular woman, she's working in a job, she's very unhappy in her job. She wants to lose weight. And so when she came back to the second class, the miracle that had already started to occur, remember, these are people who were pretty well versed in receiving already, so they weren't beginners. But within that first week, her boss gave her this certificate award for all the hard work she'd done. There was a gift certificate to a restaurant, some cash, all of this like appreciation for her. By week 2, she was transferred, without saying a word, was transferred into another position in the company that she found enormously satisfying, that kind of made use of her creativity and just, kind of everything that she had to offer. Now, the weight loss came off, but it was like the goal got to work helping the conditions in her life, rather in what I had assumed would be these very obvious ways that would have happened. And that happened with other women who were in that course as well, that the conditions in their life started to change in very miraculous ways. They lost weight, but it just wasn't the way I thought it was going to be, which is, again, kind of the miracle of receiving. So often you think you know how something's going to work or turn out. And when you stop blocking the incoming, oh, no, I already know about that, I'm okay. When you stop doing that, you end up with people helping you in ways that you cannot even imagine. And of course, because she was a skilled receiver, she was very grateful. So she didn't turn anything down. She didn't, about any of that. She was extremely appreciative. And obviously that went into her gratitudes list also. Right.
It seems kind of innate, giving and receiving, even from birth.
Yeah.
So why do we make it become such a natural habit if it provides us with such negativity in our life?
Can you rephrase that?
Sure. So it's kind of innate. So where are we learning it? Why are we accepting it? Why are we allowing it to be a part of our life?
So we allow it, in my view, is that we are, in our culture, that we are so kind of cultured to give, which obviously we should all give. But truly, in this room, I'm going to hazard a guess that if you all went to sleep and snoozed for 100 years, woke up, you'd still know how to give. That's not where your work is, right? You know how to give.
There's a whole season dedicated to giving, right? The whole holidays is dedicated to giving.
And receiving.
But there's no education.
Well, how about the receiving? No, don't give to me. No presents for me. No. Now, I'm not saying don't, however you want to handle it, but you will see the discomfort of, like, would you say, like, oh, I can't wait for Christmas because I'm going to receive a whole bunch of stuff. That might be a little unseemly.
Or if you're a kid, if you're a kid.
Yeah, so if you're a kid, right, so that it's natural. And here's the miracle of receiving. As soon as you start doing these receiving exercises, and I believe because it's our natural state, that energy moves quickly. It feels so normal to you that once you start doing this, so that this kind of pushing through, working through as a way of solving everything just starts to feel unnatural. It's a societal idea about how people should behave and how they should think. And frankly, especially for women. So.
We have time for one more question.
Thank you. First, I read your book cover to cover yesterday. I studied Charles Hennell Master Key System, and reading your book yesterday was a moment.
Oh, thank you.
Going alongside of what the last person just said, yes. One of your exercises, as I read it, was confronting your demons. So your big circle, little circle.
Yes.
Inviting your monsters in.
Yes.
How do you, and I'm at the precipice with, thanks to a lot of women in this group, of a life-changing job moment where, in fact, it was Jill McCabe, Marble McCabe, who had said, Mel, just receive, shut up and just receive. And it was just one of those things where it was just like, you're right. I've always worried about other, things happening that I've never just received.
Yes.
How is it that we're able to confront our demons or our monsters by just inviting them in, where you've said before, where just accept them in. You don't have to deal with them. Just accept them in. And if you send them back out for a while until you're ready to deal with them, the process, how long does it really take to, once you've understood and acknowledged your demon, to accept him and confront him, to deal with that, so we can achieve that next step of true reciprocity?
What you're talking about, she's talking about an exercise that I have in my course and in my book, and it's called the Monster Celebration. It's a very powerful exercise. If you have heard of shadow work before, that when we kind of acknowledge or have a conversation with, let's say, the parts of our personality that we are the least happy with. So that this idea that we have these parts of ourselves that also need to be received is some very deep work, which is what that exercise does. Now, the reason for it, and the reason for the inclusion in becoming a skilled receiver, is I have a motto: whatever you don't receive, you marry, go to work for, or give birth to. So in other words, it's going to show up in your life. So here's an example. If I can never ever be angry, because that is very unacceptable, very often what happens if I'm that person, I have a bully for a boss, for a spouse, I encounter that anger somewhere else in my life. It hasn't gone anywhere. So that just like we can't, like if there's somebody who is a difficult person for me, who is standing right next to me, they don't go away because I go like this. Are they still there? Are they still there? Like if I blind myself to them, they're still there. Just like some of these feelings that we've been taught are very unacceptable, so we get afraid of them. We get afraid of expressing them. That exercise is a deep one, and it is further in the book, and it's definitely further in the course, because you want to get some ground, some pavement underneath you in receiving, so that you can see how it works. So this is a way to do deeper work, to what it does in receiving these parts, it contributes to your wholeness. It helps your goal connect with you. It helps you connect with yourself. You begin to have a deeper and more authentic relationship with yourself. and therefore with other people. And that opens all kinds of doors that cannot happen, or often, let's say, without that. Things do happen anyway, but that greases the wheels, let's say. Does that answer your question? That's a really deep question about the section of the book, yeah.
I mean, literally, it was such an amazing read, and I mentioned it to Mara when she sent out the post yesterday. The book is very, very engrossing, and you can read it in 4 hours and get a true understanding of being able to put in the effort is, and that was, I think, what was the key
Yes.
moment, or at least the turning moment for me.
The Monster Celebration is a turning point, I think, for everybody who's ever taken my course. I get emails all the time within the subject line, Monster Celebration. People love to tell me their Monster Celebrations. I love to hear about their Monster Celebrations. Every single one is so unique, so interesting, so deep, just profound. But that exercise, as it comes after some other exercises. So the book kind of leads you through to give you all your stepping stones. But that exercise will mark a turning point for everybody. And it will take you to a place that is deeper, thoughtful, profound, not always comfortable, but it opens up a universe of possibilities. And it helps you in ways that can't really be described until you do it.
Yeah.
I hope that answers your question. Okay, good.
One of the goals that you and I had, even with hosting this evening, was to help Philadelphia become a city of receivers.
Yes.
And it all starts with the women in this room, and I just want
our goal,
it's
yes.
our goal. So in closing, I just want to go over the ABCs, and which is accept our compliments. Everyone can start doing that. Just say thank you. Be spiritually naked and just practice radical self-acceptance, and the writing down your gratitudes.
Yes, and just counting
your
your
blessings.
blessings and widening your idea of gratitude to include your wholeness, so that you're including everything rather than cherry picking. And that way you do become a skilled receiver. And yes, Marla and I have talked about, we want everybody in Philadelphia to be such ace receivers. So I think it's like we can help change this city in such positive ways by simply practicing our receiving. And most receive exercises don't take more than 60 seconds. So it's a very practical way to bring a miracle into your life.
Yeah. And through working with you, I came up with this quote of my own, which is that there's a direct correlation between a woman's ability to receive and her ability to achieve.
Yes.
So
Well
the
done.
more,
I love that.
thanks, Coach. So it's you will be amazed at what you're able to welcome into your life and achieve just through becoming a more receptive person and reading Amanda's book.
Yes, and in fact, after I wrote The Power of Receiving, which has kind of a lot of the goal, this is the beginning book and kind of the goal, the 5-week course with lots of examples. But then I talked to so many women after the first book came out. I wanted to write a book that was specifically for women of just the stuff that we deal with every single day in our life, just what our lives are about. So this book, Born to Receive, 7 Powerful Steps Women Can Take Today to Reclaim Their Half of the Universe, is about receiving with 7 kind of major steps, but it's also a book I wrote a few years later. So this book also contains a deepening of my own experience and my own ideas about receiving also. So that's in this book.
Great.
Do you ever do workshops on this?
I do. So I do workshops, and I'm available.
And you're writing Ardmore.
What's that?
And you're writing Ardmore. So.
And I'm right in Ardmore, exactly. I come to the city a lot, but absolutely I'm available for workshops, and I coach. I'm very passionate about this topic of receiving. In my opinion, I mean, I've seen it change my life. I've seen it change so many people's life. To me, it just makes sense. Giving, receiving, activity, and receptivity in balance. Your life can't help but change in amazing ways. So this is such a short kind of little, intro to what receiving is. So I encourage you to, on my website, I have articles on my website.
And you also
a blog.
teach, in addition to individuals, you also teach groups. So you coached our board, the Walnut Club, with goal setting and receiving as well. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yes. So many boards, businesses, I've given talks to businesses because, of course, in businesses also you have givers, receivers, or so many people feel they're overgiving in work and other people are not doing their fair share. Have we all run across that before? So how do you get that equality as well? Or for NGOs I've talked to, when you have anyone in the giving professions, very often because of our culture, the whole receiving thing, the way it comes down to our clients and staff as well, that inability to receive ends up finding its way into all of the relationships all the way down to the client. So when you know how to receive, it helps in a work environment or within an organization. Yes, I've worked with a board also because boards have goals, and so we've worked on
and we've
goals for the board,
achieved
and
all of
we've
our
achieved
goals.
them. Exactly.
So thank you, Amanda, for being with us this
Thank
evening.
you so much for coming out tonight. Thank you.